There is a reality about narcissists that very few people recognize. Once you truly understand it, you begin to see their actions through a completely different lens. Behind the confidence they display, behind the effortless charm they use to attract people, and behind the sense of superiority they project, there is often a hidden emotional struggle that remains buried beneath the surface. Many people assume narcissists are genuinely happy with themselves. They believe these individuals enjoy causing pain and move through life without experiencing regret, insecurity, or emotional struggles. However, the deeper psychological picture is much more complex. The person they present to the world is often very different from what exists internally. Their inner battles can remain hidden so effectively that even those closest to them may never recognize what is happening beneath the mask. A narcissist is not always the emotionally untouchable person they appear to be. In many cases, their inner world can be filled with instability, fear, and unresolved pain. Their suffering is often concealed behind confidence, control, and a carefully created image. Understanding this hidden side allows you to see their behavior from a deeper psychological perspective. It helps you recognize manipulation, understand emotional patterns, and notice the reasons behind certain actions that may otherwise seem confusing. When you learn to look beyond appearances, it becomes much harder for someone's carefully crafted image to deceive you. The first hidden sign of narcissistic suffering is something that is rarely visible to others, yet it influences almost everything they do. It is a deep internal sense of emptiness. From the outside, narcissists often appear extremely confident. They may act as if they know their worth, believe they are exceptional, and feel completely comfortable with who they are. They can present themselves as powerful, successful, and completely certain of their importance. But beneath this outer display, there can be a fragile sense of identity that feels incomplete. The emptiness they experience is not simply a temporary emotion caused by stress or a difficult moment. It can remain present beneath the surface for long periods of time. They may feel it when attention disappears, when they are alone, or when there is no one around to validate the image they want to maintain. Without external approval, they are forced to face feelings they spend much of their lives trying to avoid. Because that inner emptiness feels uncomfortable, many narcissists search for ways to escape it by looking outside themselves for validation. They chase attention because being ignored can make them feel insignificant. They pursue status because recognition gives them temporary relief. They seek admiration because praise helps them maintain the version of themselves they want others to believe. But when the attention fades, the uncomfortable feelings often return. This is why many narcissists struggle with silence and solitude. Quiet moments can expose the parts of themselves they try hardest to hide. You may notice them constantly creating distractions through conversations, conflicts, achievements, new relationships, or social attention. What appears to be endless energy and ambition may sometimes be an attempt to avoid sitting alone with their own thoughts, without the mask and without the performance. The second sign of hidden narcissistic suffering can be seen through their inability to feel truly satisfied. Many people misunderstand this behavior and view it as simple ambition or having high expectations. From the outside, it may seem like they are simply driven people who always want improvement. However, underneath that desire for more, there can be a deeper inability to experience lasting fulfillment. Even after achieving something they wanted, the excitement often disappears quickly. A relationship that once seemed perfect may suddenly feel disappointing. A success they worked toward may lose its value shortly after they achieve it. A person they once admired may eventually become someone they criticize or devalue. This pattern often comes from an internal struggle rather than the actual circumstances around them. Real satisfaction comes from having a stable sense of self, emotional security, and the ability to appreciate what already exists. When those foundations are missing, external achievements rarely create lasting peace. This can leave narcissists trapped in a continuous search for something more. They may seek more attention, more recognition, more success, and more proof that they are important. Yet no matter how much they receive, it often fails to create the feeling they are searching for. Their lives can become a cycle of reaching goals but still feeling unfulfilled. They may enter new relationships hoping someone else will finally make them feel complete. They may chase accomplishments believing the next achievement will remove the emptiness. But the problem is not usually found in the outside world. The deeper struggle comes from an unresolved internal wound that external rewards cannot permanently repair. The third sign reveals an even deeper struggle that narcissists often work hard to hide. It is the exhausting responsibility of maintaining a false version of themselves. Most narcissists build a carefully designed image of who they want others to believe they are. This image may portray them as more intelligent, more successful, more attractive, more powerful, or more important than they truly feel inside. This is not simply an occasional act or a temporary performance. Over time, this false identity can become something they feel they must constantly protect. Maintaining it requires continuous effort because they cannot allow others to see the insecurity, fear, or vulnerability hidden beneath the surface. It is like living every day on a stage where they must always remain in character, always proving the image they created, and never feeling completely free to reveal their authentic self. Imagine living with the constant fear that if people ever discovered who you truly are beneath the surface, everything you have created could fall apart. This is one of the hidden emotional burdens many narcissistic individuals carry. They often become extremely focused on controlling how others perceive them. They carefully observe reactions, analyze conversations, and search for any indication that someone is questioning their image. Being genuinely seen can feel threatening because it forces them to face the parts of themselves they have spent years hiding. This constant need to protect their appearance creates immense emotional pressure. Over time, that pressure may come out as frustration, anger, emotional distance, coldness, or an intense desire to control situations and people around them. Many people struggle to understand why someone who appears so confident can become deeply upset by a small criticism or simple disagreement. The reason often goes beyond ordinary pride. They are not only defending their ego, they are protecting the identity they have built to keep themselves emotionally stable. Their arrogance may not come from true inner confidence, but from a desperate need to avoid feeling insignificant or ordinary. The exaggerated sense of importance is often a defense against a fragile self-image that never became fully secure. This is why criticism can create such a powerful reaction. When someone challenges their behavior, questions their abilities, or refuses to give them the admiration they expect, it may feel like a direct attack on their entire sense of self. For a narcissist, the image they created is not simply a disguise they can remove whenever they want. Over time, it can become the only version of themselves they know how to rely on. When that image is threatened, they may feel as if the foundation beneath them is collapsing. This explains why their reactions can seem extreme compared to the situation itself. A small comment may lead to defensiveness, anger, blame, or even cruelty because they are trying to protect themselves from a deeper emotional fear. What others see as an unnecessary overreaction may actually be an attempt to prevent feelings of shame, insecurity, or inner breakdown. Understanding these patterns allows you to recognize unhealthy behaviors more clearly and helps you separate appearance from reality. The more awareness you develop about human psychology, the easier it becomes to identify manipulation, emotional confusion, and destructive relationship patterns. The fourth hidden sign of narcissistic suffering comes from a fear they rarely admit, but often carry beneath their confidence. It is the fear of becoming unnoticed, forgotten, or no longer important. Beneath the need to appear powerful and exceptional, there can be a deep fear of losing significance. They may fear being replaced, ignored, or treated as ordinary. For many people, being average may simply feel uncomfortable. But for a narcissistic personality, losing the feeling of being special can feel almost unbearable because their identity is often connected to being admired, chosen, superior, or different from others. The idea of no longer standing out can feel like losing the very thing that gives them a sense of value. This fear explains why many narcissists struggle when they are no longer the main focus of attention. They may feel threatened when another person receives praise or recognition. They may criticize, compete with, or attempt to diminish someone who seems to be gaining more admiration than they are. For a healthy person, another individual's success does not reduce their own worth. But for someone whose self-esteem depends heavily on comparison, another person's achievements can feel like a personal loss. Every compliment someone else receives may feel like something being taken away from them. Every success around them may be interpreted as evidence that their own importance is decreasing. This struggle can become even more noticeable as narcissists get older. Aging naturally brings changes for everyone, but for someone who depends heavily on external validation, those changes can feel especially threatening. Physical appearance changes, social influence shifts, career status may become less powerful, and the attention they once received may slowly move toward new people. The sources that once supported their carefully built image may become harder to maintain. As those external forms of validation begin to fade, the emotions they avoided for years may start becoming impossible to ignore. Without a strong internal sense of worth, these changes can feel overwhelming rather than natural. This is why some narcissistic individuals may become more controlling, resentful, or emotionally unpredictable over time. Beneath these behaviors can be a painful realization that the admiration they depended on is no longer as easy to obtain. The world may stop responding to them in the same way, and they may struggle because they never developed a secure foundation within themselves. Instead of accepting change, they may experience it as a threat. They may look at younger or more successful people with envy instead of appreciation. They may see another person's growth as evidence of their own decline. And as life continues moving forward, they may struggle with the feeling that they are losing the attention and importance they worked so hard to protect. Beneath all these behaviors is the same painful belief that has followed them for a long time, the fear that if they are not exceptional, impressive, or above everyone else, then they have no value at all. This fear connects to the fifth and perhaps most profound struggle within narcissistic patterns. It reaches the deepest emotional wound that often exists beneath the surface. That wound is the inability to create genuine emotional closeness with others. A narcissist may have relationships, partners, family members, friends, supporters, and people who admire them. From the outside, it may seem like they are surrounded by love and connection, but having many people around you does not always mean you are truly connected to them. Real intimacy requires something much deeper. Authentic emotional connection requires vulnerability, honesty, and the courage to reveal the parts of yourself that are not perfect. It requires showing fears, insecurities, weaknesses, and emotional needs without feeling ashamed. For many narcissistic individuals, this level of openness feels extremely threatening. Allowing someone to see behind the carefully created image can feel like giving another person the power to hurt them. It can feel unsafe, exposing, and overwhelming. Because of this, they often keep their deepest emotions hidden behind layers of protection. They may talk about their opinions, achievements, experiences, and ideas, but the most vulnerable parts of who they are remain locked away. Over time, this creates a painful emotional distance between them and the people around them. Because they struggle to reveal their authentic selves, many narcissists experience a form of loneliness that attention cannot solve. They may receive praise, affection, admiration, and constant interaction, yet still feel emotionally disconnected inside. This is not the loneliness of having no people around you. It is the loneliness of feeling unseen while constantly being noticed. It is an emptiness that compliments cannot remove and admiration cannot repair. They continue searching for connection, but they often look for it through control, dependence, validation, or influence over others, instead of through genuine emotional openness. They may want to feel important to someone, but they struggle with the vulnerability required to create a truly meaningful bond. This creates a painful cycle where relationships that should bring fulfillment often leave them feeling even more empty. The heartbreaking part is that the thing they need most is often the thing their defenses prevent them from accepting. Real love requires allowing yourself to be fully known. It requires someone seeing your imperfections, your fears, your struggles, and your emotional needs while still choosing to care about you. But for a narcissistic person, being seen in this way may feel less like love and more like exposure. Instead of experiencing vulnerability as a pathway to connection, they may experience it as a threat. Instead of allowing closeness, they may create distance while still longing for the very intimacy they avoid. Because of this internal conflict, they may confuse certain things with genuine love. They may mistake admiration for emotional connection. They may mistake control for security. They may mistake having power over someone for being deeply valued by them. When these illusions eventually break down, they often look outward for someone to blame. They may blame their partner, their family, their friends, or the circumstances around them. They may struggle to recognize that the same emotional patterns continue appearing because the barrier is not always created by the people around them. Often, the greatest obstacle is the wall they have built inside themselves. It is a locked door they fear opening because they do not know what they will find behind it. This is the hidden suffering beneath the confidence, the superiority, and the need to appear untouchable. Understanding this does not mean excusing harmful actions or ignoring the damage narcissistic behavior can cause. People are still responsible for the way they treat others. But seeing this deeper psychological struggle can help you understand the person more clearly. It allows you to recognize that what appears powerful on the outside may actually be much more fragile underneath. It challenges the illusion that narcissists have everything under control or that they are somehow living a perfect life while everyone else struggles. The reality is often much more complicated. Many people who appear the strongest externally may be fighting battles internally that others cannot see. When you understand this, the emotional power they once had over you begins to decrease. The fear they created becomes weaker because you start seeing the reality behind the image. They are not an unstoppable force. They are not someone who has complete control over everything. They are a person carrying wounds, defenses, and emotional struggles hidden beneath a carefully protected identity. And when that identity begins to break, the experience can become extremely painful for them. When admiration disappears, when rejection happens, when relationships end, when failures can no longer be ignored, and when the attention they depend on fades away, the carefully maintained image begins to weaken. What emerges beneath the surface is often not the strength they tried to display, but emotions they spent years avoiding. There may be deep shame they cannot accept, anger they cannot regulate, sadness they do not understand, and grief for the authentic version of themselves they never allowed to develop. This is why narcissistic collapse can feel so intense. It is not simply about losing an argument, experiencing failure, or facing disappointment. It is the breakdown of an identity they spent years protecting. The things they used to define themselves begin losing their power, and they are forced to face the emotions they worked so hard to escape. The deepest tragedy is that the very thing they fear most may also be the thing that could help them heal. It is the acceptance of being human, the acceptance that they can have flaws, fears, weaknesses, and emotional needs without losing their worth. They do not have to be extraordinary every moment. They do not have to constantly prove their importance. They do not have to maintain a perfect image to deserve love and acceptance. The freedom they search for may come from embracing the parts of themselves they have spent their lives trying to hide. Yet many narcissistic individuals spend years, sometimes even their entire lives, avoiding this reality. The more they escape from their true emotions, the more trapped they become inside the image they have created. Every effort to protect the false version of themselves takes them further away from their authentic identity. Over time, the distance between who they appear to be and who they truly are becomes heavier to carry. The mask that was created for protection eventually becomes a prison. What once helped them feel safe begins to prevent them from experiencing genuine peace, honesty, and emotional freedom. If these insights connect with situations you have experienced, they can provide something incredibly valuable, a clearer understanding. They help bring perspective to behaviors that may have seemed confusing, unpredictable, or impossible to explain. Awareness gives you the ability to recognize unhealthy patterns without becoming consumed by them. Understanding allows you to respond from a place of wisdom rather than emotional reaction. When you understand the psychology behind certain behaviors, you become less vulnerable to manipulation and less likely to get trapped in cycles that damage your emotional well-being. The next time you meet someone whose confidence feels exaggerated, whose sense of superiority appears carefully performed, or whose desire for constant admiration seems impossible to satisfy, try to look beyond the surface. Remember the emptiness they may be trying to hide. Remember the endless search for validation that never truly brings peace. Remember the exhausting effort required to maintain an image that must constantly be protected. Remember the fear of becoming unnoticed and the struggle with emotional closeness that they may never openly admit. What appears to be strength, control, and confidence from the outside may sometimes be covering deep insecurity and vulnerability underneath. The greatest tragedy of narcissistic behavior is not only the harm that can be caused to others. That pain is real and should never be ignored, but there is another painful reality that often remains unseen. Many narcissists spend their lives pursuing an image that was never truly authentic. They fight to protect a version of themselves that was created from fear, insecurity, and the need for approval rather than from genuine self-acceptance. They invest enormous energy into defending an identity that requires constant maintenance, and while they are focused on proving their importance to the world, they may lose connection with the one thing that could truly transform their lives. That transformation begins with the courage to be genuinely seen, not as someone flawless, not as someone who always has control, not as someone who must always appear superior or untouchable, but as a real human being with imperfections, emotions, fears, and weaknesses. True strength does not come from creating an image that no one can challenge. It comes from accepting yourself even when you are not perfect. It comes from allowing yourself to be honest, vulnerable, and real. The very truth they spend so much time avoiding may be the same truth that could finally bring them the peace they have been searching for all along. A false self is the image a person creates when they feel they cannot fully accept or reveal who they truly are. It is a version of themselves designed to gain approval, avoid judgment, or protect hidden insecurities. This outer identity may look confident, powerful, successful, or completely in control, but it does not always reflect what is happening internally. When someone becomes dependent on this image, they may spend more time protecting how others see them than understanding their own emotions. The more effort they put into maintaining this appearance, the more disconnected they can become from their genuine feelings and personal reality. The authentic self is the part of a person that exists without pretending, performing, or trying to impress others. It includes their real emotions, fears, strengths, weaknesses, and personal experiences. When someone accepts this side of themselves, they no longer need to constantly prove their value because they understand that imperfections do not make them less worthy. However, when a person rejects their authentic identity, they may rely heavily on achievements, attention, or admiration to feel complete. This creates a constant struggle between the person they show to the world and the person they are afraid to reveal. Emotional intimacy is the type of connection where people feel safe enough to share their true thoughts and feelings. It goes beyond simply spending time with someone or having conversations. It requires trust, honesty, and the courage to be vulnerable. A person may have many relationships but still feel emotionally alone if they never allow anyone to see their deeper emotions. Without openness, connections can remain limited because people only interact with the surface version of each other. Narcissistic injury occurs when something threatens the image a person has created about themselves. Criticism, rejection, failure, or losing admiration can create intense emotional reactions because these experiences challenge the way they see themselves. Instead of viewing these moments as normal parts of life, they may experience them as personal attacks. Their reaction often comes from the fear of losing the identity they have worked so hard to maintain. Narcissistic collapse happens when the protective image someone has built begins to weaken. This can occur when they lose control, face rejection, experience failure, or no longer receive the attention they depend on. During this period, emotions that were hidden for a long time may rise to the surface. Feelings such as shame, anger, sadness, and insecurity can become difficult to manage because the defenses they relied on are no longer strong enough to cover them. External validation is the process of depending on outside sources to feel valuable, important, or accepted. Instead of having a steady sense of self-worth from within, a person may look toward praise, recognition, attention, or approval from others to feel secure. While everyone enjoys being appreciated, the problem begins when someone feels empty or insignificant without constant reassurance. This creates a never-ending search for proof that they matter. No amount of compliments, achievements, or admiration can fully satisfy a person who has not developed inner confidence. The approval may provide temporary relief, but the need for more validation often returns because the deeper insecurity has not been addressed. Emotional isolation is a state where someone feels disconnected from others even when they are surrounded by people. It is not about having no relationships. It is about lacking genuine emotional closeness. A person may have friends, family, or a partner, but still feel alone because they do not allow themselves to be truly understood. When someone constantly hides their emotions, fears, and vulnerabilities, others can only connect with the surface version of them. Over time, this creates a distance between the person and those who care about them, leaving them feeling unseen despite being surrounded by attention. The fear of irrelevance is the deep anxiety of losing importance, recognition, or influence. It is the fear that people will stop noticing, admiring, or valuing someone. For a person whose identity depends on feeling special, becoming ordinary can feel extremely threatening. This fear can influence the way they react to other people's success, changing circumstances, or moments when they are no longer the center of attention. Instead of accepting change naturally, they may experience it as a loss of their personal value. Psychological defenses are the mental barriers people develop to protect themselves from painful emotions, uncomfortable truths, or difficult experiences. These defenses can help someone cope during challenging moments, but when they become too strong, they can prevent personal growth. A person may use denial, blame, avoidance, or control to escape feelings they do not want to face. Over time, these protective habits can create distance between them and reality because they focus more on avoiding pain than understanding its source. The need for admiration is a strong desire to receive praise, attention, and recognition from others. It is normal for people to appreciate encouragement, but when someone's confidence depends entirely on being admired, they may struggle whenever attention decreases. Admiration becomes less about enjoying appreciation and more about maintaining a sense of identity. Without it, they may feel unnoticed, unimportant, or threatened because their emotional stability depends on how others respond to them.